Good morning, dear friends. For many, first day of school. For us, it's day number 74 of our run/exercise. And today we're dedicating it to the Paganini of the piano. Yesterday we spoke about the virtuoso Paganini, and I forgot to mention to you that after he got sick with syphilis, he started using for treatment mercury. We know the side effects of mercury now. We try not to eat too much fish. But at that time, it was the only thing they knew for the treatment of syphilis. And he also used opium. So one of the first virtuoso or public people to use the opium, public performers. Anyway, the person today we're talking about is Franz Liszt. He's of the same era as Frederick Chopin and Felix Mendelssohn. We've spoken about them. Same period of time with Hans Christian Andersen, who commented about Franz Liszt, that when he played the piano, he looked so handsome and beautiful, and not only his pieces were beautiful, but also he himself. And the famous German poet Heinrich Heinz in 1842 coined the word Lisztomania, because there was a true hysteria during his performances, and he would make a lot of them. So the Franz Liszt was one of the first also musicians to give away his wealth for philanthropic causes. He would make a lot of concerts for the people who suffered for his nation. He was very nationalistic. He was a Hungarian. At that time it was the Austrian Empire. He was a conductor, composer. Did I say when he was born? Sorry if I didn't. 1811, and died at quite an older age compared to the rest of the people who died. Like Schubert was like 31 years old who died. Also Felix Mendelssohn, very young, and you know, before he reached I think 40 something, 45, something like that. And Frederick Chopin, who also died at the age of 39. So he reached to 77. He died in 1886. When he first started playing was his father, who played for the court of the prince in Hungary. His father knew Beethoven personally, and he played on the violin, the piano, the cello, the guitar, and those same instruments he taught to his son, who started teaching him at the age of 7. At the age of 8 he started his first rudimentary compositions, so they weren't on the level as Chopin was doing, who already did his 2 first Polonaises when he was 7 years old. But at the age of 9 he started performing in concert, and some wealthy investors saw him and said, we will help finance your education in Austria. And so they did, and his father took Shabbaton, a year of off from his work, and afterwards another 2 years, and he went to learn in Vienna. One of his teachers was Salieri. We know Salieri from the movie Amadeus, where the idea of him having speeded up the death of Mozart was popularized, whether true or not. They were rivals. And then at the age of 16 his father dies, and he moves to Paris, where he starts giving lessons, falls in love with one of his pupils, who is the daughter of the finance minister of Charles X. If you remember, Charles X came back after the end of the revolution, and I'll have to get back to you about the rest of it as I need to start running, but he refuses that relationship, and he gets very upset. He gets actually ill. One discusses getting ill from love. Well, he was very, very sick, and he wanted to throw everything. He was questioning the meaning of life, etc. And he wanted to become a priest. His mother convinced him not to. And then at the age of 18, a little bit later, 19, he saw around the same time, maybe it was 17 when he got ill. I apologize for maybe a year of an error there. And he, at the age of 18, in 1832, yeah, that'll be 1819, there was a performance by Paganini for the cholera, for those sick with cholera, trying to get money, a benefit concert. And he watched Paganini, and he was so impressed that he was thinking that he would get back to music and try to do with the piano what Paganini did with the violin. And indeed, he succeeds to do that. And one of his admirers, well, before we get to that, Frédéric Chopin also inspires him a lot because of his romantic music that he writes. And he learns all the techniques, sits, a lot of time, spends a lot of time. He actually had a small keyboard piano that he would take with him on a travel, because he would, spend about 4,000 miles per year traveling, especially later on in his life, and not to lose his technique, which he garnered from all the inventors of the piano techniques, worked on it and combined it himself. There were many techniques to discuss, including the three hands technique. He actually wrote a book about that when he was in Geneva, in Switzerland, teaching there in the music school, but somehow that book of techniques got lost. Anyway, one of one of his admirers was a famous, beautiful duchess. We discussed about her a little bit, how one of the reasons that him and Chopin perhaps had a little falling out was because she admired Chopin. But still, she gave 3 children to Franz Liszt. She left her husband, never got a divorce. It was difficult to get a divorce then. But they were together for about 10 years. And he had with her 1 son and 2 daughters. Unfortunately, in 1859, his son at the age of 20 dies, perhaps from typhus, and his daughter dies in 62, 3 years later, and he's only left with 1 daughter, I think the oldest one, who later on marries one of his pupil virtuoso pianists, and then remarries Richard Wagner, whom Franz Liszt helped to make known through playing his compositions and developing them. And Richard Wagner himself discussed the fact that he feels when he listens to Franz Liszt that he's nothing, and that Franz Liszt is really the greatest musician that ever lived. So, a lot of things I should tell about him, especially what I was impressed by was his philanthropic involvement after 57. Practically all the money that he would make would go to philanthropy, the Royal Academy in Hungary. He basically put the money to make it, subsidize it, and after in Pest there was a flood. He made a concert, the money went to them. Then there was in Bonn they were trying to make a memorial for Beethoven, but that memorial was about to fall because not enough funds. He right away pledged funds and went back on the concert tour. Because of that, his wife was upset because she's like, "Oh, come on, you're going all the time to concerts everywhere around Europe. You know, you don't love me anymore. You only think about your music." Well, in 1846, I think it was, he met on one of his concerts the Polish princess, and they would make a lifelong friendship together, and she convinced him to stop his performances and to start writing compositions. After he finishes his tour, which includes Russia and the Balkans, he goes ahead and starts writing more compositions. Some of his most productive time he spent then to write the compositions, all until the death of his son and daughter, at which time he goes back to religion, questions the purpose of life, lives a very Spartan type of life, gets the title of an Abbi. He'd often be called Abbi Liszt, and a little beforehand he also gets the title, honorary title of doctorate, although he never used it, doctor in public. It was quite unusual to get that honorary title, but he gets it. By the way, he never gets a general education. Unfortunately, he gets a musical education in Austria. Never gets a general education, and he feels the lack of it. And when he goes to Paris, especially after the rebuff of his first love, he pores over books, educates himself with the latest philosophy and literature of the time. George Sand was also a friend of his, not a lover but a friend. And he puts money to build 2 churches, one of them in Hungary, and he composes the music march for the Emperor Joseph and his wife Elizabeth, who later on becomes CC, and who uses her beauty and her influence. She takes like 6-7 hours to prepare herself before getting out every day when she realized the power of her beauty, and uses it to champion the cause of Hungary. Remember, Franz Liszt is a very nationalistic guy, and he wants to support his Hungary and its independence, and indeed she ends up securing its independence from her husband, the Emperor Joseph I. So he eventually, let's see if I'm missing much. Yes, at the age of 50, the Polish princess wants to give him a birthday gift. They, through very complicated maneuvers, get permission to divorce her husband, who was a Russian military officer. They go to Rome. He gets there a day before, and boom, it falls apart. How come? Pressure from the Russian Tsar, together from, her husband, who doesn't want to give her a divorce, causes the Pope to refuse to marry them. And they also threatened to, although that didn't move her, cause her to change her mind, but they confiscates her lands, because remember at that time much of Poland is under Russian hegemony. So his birthday gift for the 50 years old to marry the Polish princess never comes to fruition, but they still are lovers and love one another. Wonder why they wouldn't give them the divorce. What's the sense in it? Maybe he just wanted to hurt her. But that's why there are special rules, especially in the Talmud, about the responsibility of her husband. Not the wife, but the husband to his wife, including not staying away for more than 6 months. And providing intimate relationship. Otherwise, she has the right to divorce him. Anyway, in one of his performances in Germany, at the age of 77, he contracts pneumonia and dies, and is buried over there, which was against his wishes, but there's a ceremony, he gets buried there. And there's a question whether there was a malpractice in how they took care of him. That's 1886. interesting that he was already suffering from other problems. And one of the times when he was in a hotel in Germany, he fell from the stairs and he ended up being incapacitated for 8 weeks, following which he never completely recovered. His friends said that they already saw his lower leg edema swelling, which would signify that he probably had already some congestive heart failure. Probably the stair walking was a little too much. No elevators at that time. And he basically had those compounding issues, but again, 77, much older than, the 30 somewhat years. I made a mistake, I was saying 40 somewhat. Math right now as I'm running, not fully functioning. Felix Mendelssohn and 39. I think it was 37 that Felix Mendelssohn died, and 39 Frederick Chopin. So he's 77 years old, almost doubles their lives. Horrible garbage, how people ruin and dirty the place. I mean, you know what? Why do you do that? This is a place where you sit to enjoy. Someone has to clean up after them. I really dislike this kind of attitude. Same attitude people use at home. You know, they need to be taught from early childhood. They finish eating, clean up the table after yourselves. That is disgusting. Like we don't have enough islands of plastic in the oceans that kill the fish and many other animals, birds, animals that, even if you look at it from a selfish point of view, we end up receiving on our table and eating that plastic, developing ourselves a lot of new diseases, stupidity. It's like the Paslovica, I forget the English word for it, that says don't throw a stone into a well. You may end up wanting to drink from it. Reminds of the story with Abraham and the Philistines who blocked his wells. They'll do the same to his children, although they themselves needed the water. Yeah, it's like the same with the marriage. I won't have you, but I won't let anyone else have you. Although marriage is not the only way one can have someone. But this is the end of our story. And have a lovely day and many music. I'm gonna run back now. I'm gonna too much work to do. And make music, fill your lives and make it beautiful, give it purpose. And as we're reaching the new year of the Jewish calendar, next week is Monday, Rosh Hashanah, first of the year. I would also wish you a wonderful new beginning or a continuation of whatever it is that you're doing, and the energy, perseverance to not give up and continue it. Hopefully I'll speak with you tomorrow. Have a lovely first day back to school or work or whatever it is that you're working on. Take care.